This episode is brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union. It's a special thing to be a member of Navy Federal because they are a member-owned, not-for-profit credit union that invests in its members with amazing rates and low fees. That's why members could earn and save more every year. Plus, they serve all branches of the armed forces, veterans, and their families. So if you're interested in becoming a member, learn more at NavyFederal.org. At Navy Federal Credit Union, our members are the mission. Insured by NCUA.
Why wait to earn the degree you deserve? You have the experience, you have the knowledge. Now's the time to get the credit for the work you've done and earn the recognition you deserve by starting your comeback at Purdue Global. It's time to earn a degree you'll be proud of, a degree that employers will respect. It's never too late. Never too late to come back stronger and move forward in your career. Start your comeback today at purdueglobal.edu. Purdue's online university for working adults.
Episode 185, From Overspender to Millionaire with Walli Miller.
Welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast, where you'll learn to save money, embrace simplicity, and live a richer life. Here are your hosts, Jen and Jill.
Yes, welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast. My name is Jen.
My name is Jill.
And today we are talking with our friend Walli Miller, who you guys are going to love so much, relate to, and we're excited to share this kind of extended interview with her.
It's so great. She's got so much inspiration and just tangible tips, so we're really excited to share this with you. But first, our sponsors.
Also brought to you by Pumpkin Spice. Pumpkin Spice wants to remind you that she is not pumpkin flavored, nor is she reserved for just fall cooking. She is a spice mixture that you can put in pumpkin goods, but can also be used throughout the rest of the holiday season and beyond. Her collection of ground cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, allspice, cloves. It goes well in coffee, but also in savory dishes like butternut squash pasta or roasted vegetables. So don't let your pumpkin spice languish another year in your pantry. Get creative and let her add interest to your dishes year-round.
Wow.
I
really hope
Spice.
PS paid us a lot for this.
Yeah, well, she's got money to spare. You know, it's her season. She's got money to spare.
And
sure.
She's got a lot of followers.
Yeah. Okay, so if you've got your pumpkin spice beverage or snack in hand, let's hear from Walli Miller. She is a first generation millionaire in her family. She is just this powerful Latina woman who is so nice and so fun, and you're going to love. We didn't really touch on her story about how she bought a home in Northern California, no less, and she got roommates, and instead of, investing or doing quote unquote wise things with the money, she just blew through all the rent money. And this kind of was like a catalyst for some of her journey. But I think you're just going to relate so much to her, and definitely wait till the end of the interview for some really actionable takeaways for being more intentional with your spending so you can overcome that overspending tendency and get on the track to becoming a millionaire.
Let's do it.
Walli, welcome to the Frugal Friends podcast.
Hi, I am super excited to be here. It's so nice to speak with you guys this morning.
Walli, you've got such a neat perspective and story, and I think our listeners are really going to resonate with what you've got to share here and just the inspiration, I think, that you bring to the table. So let's get into it. Can you tell us a little bit about your story? I know that overspending is a part of that, but let's just start from, a bit of the beginning. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Start from your birth.
Yes. So I was born, actually I was born and raised in New York City. I am a daughter of an immigrant. My dad immigrated here when he was like 19 years old. And we basically lived, I would say we were part of the low income community, right? My mom, for the most part, was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was the sole income earner. Now, I come from a big family. I am one of five, and I am the oldest. But I will say it wasn't until probably I was in junior high school that I kind of realized that I would even say even older than that I realized that we were in the low income category. And the reason for that was that in the Bronx, it's the poorest borough in New York City. So everybody was like us. But even with that, there were a lot of things where we were different. So for example, having two parents in the household was a huge privilege. It was very different from a lot of my friends. And even something as having like two cars, right? Like my mom drove the minivan, like an old minivan, and my dad had like an older car. But like the fact that we lived in New York City, lived in the Bronx, I had two parents and both of them had cars, that was like a very different thing. But yeah, it wasn't until I would say maybe I was in high school that I realized how different I was.
What brought that awareness for you?
So when I was a junior in high school, we actually moved down to Florida, and it was,
home of humidity.
Right, exactly. Jen, we talked a little bit about this, but the struggles of having curly hair and living in Florida, right? So we moved to Florida, and it was like central Florida, about an hour south of Orlando. And it was at that point that I realized how different the world was, right? So going to school in the Bronx, living in the Bronx, we had it was super diversified, right? So there were a lot of Latinos, there were a lot of Black people, there were a lot of, like everybody was like us, versus when I went to Florida and I was like the only Hispanic, the only Latina in many of my classes. It was like very different. And also I realized there were some of my classmates who had cars, and these were like Mazda Miatas, and they're like, 16, 17 years old. So it was at that point where I had a huge culture shock. I lived in an apartment my entire life. So realizing that people had homes with like picket fences and things like that was kind of where I realized like, wow, the world is so much bigger than like, than what I really thought of.
Yeah. What would you say was your approach to money through those years, like growing up, how you've described, and kind of thinking, well, everybody else lives this way, to then realizing, oh, we might be a little bit different from other parts of the US or the world. How did that influence your money perspective?
We didn't really talk about like sit down, have family conversations about money, but I don't think that that's that unique, right? I don't know if you really had conversations with your parents about money or like budget, anything, but
came right after the sex talk.
Right, exactly.
Jill has some weird combos with her parents.
All the things.
So like conversations around money really didn't happen. So it was more, rather than direct conversations, it was like this indirect thing, right? So like when the cable would get cut off, or even sometimes the light would get cut off for the morning, and, mom was on the phone trying to figure that out. Or if I knew not to ask for certain things. So like we got a brand new pair of sneakers at the start of the year. I'm from New York, so we say sneakers. Some of you might say tennis shoes. So we would get, so it was like, yeah, we would get some new clothes at the start of the year. And that was kind of it, right? And I never really asked for much. I remember like one year I wanted a dictionary, for Christmas. Like that was like my prized possession for many, many years. So it wasn't that we really had conversations about money, but I knew that there wasn't a lot of it. And so I just knew not to ask. And of course, I did hear when I did ask for certain things, like, we don't have money for that, or maybe next time, and next time really never came. So when I, obviously left my parents' home and started branching out, it was really nice to begin earning money. Now, I remember like some of my first jobs, I didn't even know what to do with money. I literally would walk around with like a paycheck in my wallet and like didn't really have a concept of like how to spend it. But that didn't take very long for that shift to happen before I like realized, ooh, I can buy things with money. And that was kind of where the problem started.
Yeah, it can be like whiplash or the swinging of the pendulum to grow up, have a certain relationship with money, just not having it. Sometimes that can make you okay with money just because you don't have it to spend. But then when you do have it and you've not had conversations about money, yeah, that can land somebody at the total opposite end of the spectrum. What was that like for you? How did that then lead to overspending?
Oh, yeah. So I was very fortunate that when I was in my early 20s, I got into a profession and a career that I basically doubled my salary overnight, right? So I moved back to New York City, and I ended up getting a job offer across the country to California, and I doubled my salary overnight. And so I knew pay my bills, right? Pay the rent and light bills and all of this stuff. And I still had all of this extra money left over. Now, in my mind, I was good with money because I was setting some money aside. But even when I set some money aside, I still had money left over. And I didn't know what to do with it. So I was like, well, if you have money left over and you've been responsible by saving some, putting money aside, then you can spend the rest. And that was what happened. I just spent and spent and spent. I was living alone. It was just me and my dog. And I started to accumulate so many things like shoes and clothes that I had a 2-bedroom apartment. I was like storing clothes, shoes, handbags in that spare bedroom. And I had this realization, I don't know if what kicks it off. I don't know if it's a certain amount of money or an age or the work history, but I remember receiving a Social Security Administration like earnings record. And it lists like from that very first job that I had, working the summers and Burger King all the way to my current job. And it listed all of the money I made, so from like $600 to $700 to like thousands of dollars. And when I added up the entire amount of money that I had made in my lifetime, and by this point I was in my maybe late 20s, I realized, I added up all the money and I was like, what in the world happened? Like, where is all of this money? And that was the realization that I had, like, I am not doing something right. Like something is wrong here because it doesn't feel like I've made that much money.
What a document to receive in the mail from the Social Security office.
It is crazy. And for those who don't know, like to get your Social Security, they track how much you make every year based on your taxes, and they give you an average of your highest 30 or last 30 or something. And so occasionally you will get these documents just to keep track. And it is like you never realize how much you're spending until you see this is how much I've earned in the last 5 years.
Right.
And what have I saved in the last 5 years? What what kind of wealth have I built?
Right. Well, and also it's this whole thing, like, where did this money go? Because when I looked around, I was driving like a 5 or 6 year old Kia, right? So it wasn't like I was buying these elaborate things. Even with my clothing and shoes options, it wasn't that I was spending, thousands of dollars on a pair of jeans or a handbag. I was like shopping at Ross and Marshalls and, Nordstrom Rack and Burlington Coat Factory. So in my mind, I was frugal, right? I wasn't spending a lot of money on one item, but I was buying a bunch of cheap items and buying a lot of it. And so it was, and to your point, Jen, you can actually, I don't even know if they mail these out anymore because I haven't received one in the mail in a while, but you can just go to the Social Security Administration website and sign up for a free account. And I recommend everybody do that. So if you've never done that, just go to ssa.gov and you can get a free copy of your earnings report or earnings record and just kind of do that exercise to see if there's any surprises there for you.
Wow. It does cost a lot of money to live. I know I get so disappointed at the end of the year to realize man, why does it just cost so much to just survive and breathe in this world?
Have fun.
I know, yeah. But you say something really amazing, Walli, on your website in your About You section. And I think even what you're describing now, the difference, realizing the difference between being quote unquote good with money versus knowing how to build wealth. And I think there's so many people who can resonate with that. It can't just be a measurement of, well, I'm not going into debt or I'm buying things on sale. Sometimes even that makes us not actually that great with money. I hear this constantly from people like, I'm good with money, but they're not saving, they're not investing, they're not thinking about retirement, they're just not going into debt. That's what they mean by that.
Yeah.
This is exactly right. So in my mind, even some of because I was always kind of like a personal finance nerd, so I was one that I would like turn on PBS and listen to Susie Orman's like retirement specials. Now, I didn't understand everything that was going on, but I didn't always resonate because there were a lot of people who were struggling with the debt and credit card debt and things like that. So in my mind, I didn't have credit card debt. I paid off my credit card at the end of the month. I was good, right? But I was missing that piece. I was missing the piece of building wealth. And that term even like was not part of my vocabulary. Wealth building wasn't a conversation or part of, our family talks at all, ever. And so it wasn't until later, and we can talk about like if you want, we can talk about like how I began to understand what building wealth was and how that was sort of the missing piece. But, to your point, like I was always frugal, right? It's funny to me now, like there's this whole movement over the last decade where minimalism is a great thing, where people like reuse, the butter jars or the butter containers and the mayonnaise jar. I'm like, you go into any Puerto Rican household and you open up a butter container, there's not butter in there. There's like leftovers from yesterday, right? Like
this isn't new.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Like we were, sneaking in food to any of the theme parks, or we would go, if we went to a theme park with the family, like we had a whole trunk full of food and we would like leave the park, go to the parking lot, eat lunch, and then come back. So it was like we did a lot of these frugal things. And so in my mind, I was frugal. I wasn't spending, $200 on a pair of jeans. I didn't have credit card debt. So yeah, I was totally good with money without realizing that I was missing that wealth building piece.
So what was that turning point that took you? Because I think that is going to resonate with like a lot of our listeners. Because I know that it sounds like you're telling my story. Like I thought that I was frugal. I was buying generic brands. I was turning down like experiences that were too expensive. And I was just buying my lattes and they, all of this little stuff added up. But I didn't I never considered myself to be spendy because I wasn't buying luxury things. So like, what was it for you that was the turning point that you're like, okay, I want to build wealth. I don't want to just be like not in debt.
The first thing was sort of receiving a history of like my earnings and realizing how much money I had made in my lifetime. And I didn't have a whole lot to show for it. Now, I wish that would have been the moment that I decided to do something about it. But that was definitely something that stuck with me. The second part was that I had a career that I loved and I had a job that I loved until I didn't, right? I had fantastic bosses, a great supervisor. And when management changed because my boss left, and I realized that I can't quit my job. I am essentially living paycheck to paycheck. Maybe I would be okay if one paycheck didn't come in in my direct deposit. But if I was basically 2 paychecks away from like losing everything that I had worked so hard for. And it was at that moment that I realized that I had those handcuffs, right? That I was really stuck, that me being good with money was it was a falsity, right? It didn't really exist. And at that point, I went to the great Google, gods and started researching and trying to figure out. And it just so happens, I feel like you just think about something and all of a sudden the material that you're thinking about you see it everywhere. And I saw this article about this couple who had quit their jobs in order to travel the world. And that was something that I always enjoyed. I love to travel. And so I began to read this article about how they were able to do it. And that sort of opened up the floodgates. And I went down like this rabbit hole of like, what are people doing? How is that possible? How could you, quit your jobs before the age of 40 in order to travel the world? And that was kind of where my mind opened to the piece that I was missing, which was that wealth building piece, that wealth building component, and how people were doing it was through investing.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power. So how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing. And of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/strategic. That's oracle.com/strategic. oracle.com/strategic.
We all agree that reducing carbon emissions is a good thing. And once again, Toyota is leading the way. We hear a lot about fully electric vehicles, and Toyota has them, with more on the way. But we also know a BEV is not for everyone, whether it's because of cost, range, or concern about finding a charging station when you need it.
Plus, the raw materials used to manufacture batteries are limited. Enter Beyond Zero, Toyota's vision for a carbon-neutral future, in vehicles and in manufacturing plants, too, in the years ahead. The materials used to make just one long-range battery for an EV could be used to make batteries for 6 plug-in hybrids or 90 gas-electric hybrids. That's why Toyota's position today is electrified diversified, empowering you to choose how to reduce your own carbon footprint with the vehicle that's right for you. A hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or battery EV. So shop, learn more, and get details at toyota.com/beyond zero. Toyota, let's go places.
It's so interesting to me that your wake-up call was not tons of debt. That's a very common story as well. And it's great. Whatever the wake up call is, that shifts behavior and mindset and perspective. But I think it's a really helpful thing to hear that sometimes our wake up call is just that there could be other more beneficial ways of living and handling finances, that it doesn't necessarily need to be that we're in tons of debt and we need to make a massive shift. Sometimes it's just, I'm not aimed at the right thing right now, and I could be having better for myself. I could be making different choices. At the same time, Walli, I so appreciate you sharing your background and story with us. I can't even I can't even say that I know fully what that experience was like for you growing up in poverty in the Bronx. And yeah, all of the background that you have there. And so thank you for entrusting us with that. But I think that's so much a part of this too, for all of us to be recognizing the context and environment in which we grew up in and how that has shaped and formed perspective. It sounds as though for you, there were quite a few things that you needed to push through, even just for the people that you grew up around, right? Like it can be more barriers to building wealth or even just not getting into debt when no one else around you is doing that, or there's a certain type of perspective about money. So yeah, my goodness, what you have done for yourself is really incredible and I think really inspiring for a lot of people. And with all of that said, I'm curious for you, what have been some of the things that you've been able to do to become a more conscious consumer, to go from, I'm spending frugally, but it's not on the things I actually want to be spending on?
Yeah, that, it was a true gut check when I realized that I was like a paycheck away or 2 paychecks away from like losing everything. I didn't have the options. And I just wanted to go back because the shopping came with feeling like I deserved what I didn't get as a kid. Right. So now I could have the options of wearing different colored, owning different colored jeans and shirts and dresses and having options that I didn't really have as a kid. And so I wanted to like get that. And I think back to the movie Clueless, right? Remember when Cher like has the rotating closet? And I was like, yes, I want to be able to go and like, stand in my closet and like debate what outfit I'm going to wear and make sure that I don't wear like the same outfit, like at least for 2 weeks out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think about it now because I don't think that at that point I was thinking about all of that. When I sort of think about it retrospectively and I think about why did I accumulate so much stuff? It was really to be able to have the things that I didn't have growing up. And it made me feel good. It made me feel like it was proof that I had made it, that I had succeeded. And it was, again, a false veil. Like it was not a true reflection of like what success means. Like the amount of stuff that you own isn't a real reflection of success. But I think in this society, sometimes that's what we're led to believe.
Yeah, I'm convinced that most people's cars are that for them. Like, people will drive brand new cars and as like a anti-minivan, used car. Because it was easier for our parents to get used cars. Like, cars were cheaper. So we always had old cars. And I guess all my friends did too. And now all those friends, they all have very nice cars. And so there's a rental property. We live next door to like these 2 efficiencies. And there are, no joke, 2 Mercedes-Benz parked outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it like little one, not efficiencies, but like one like garage apartments. And so, yeah, I really do see like, and I felt this like, and I was fine. Like I was an only child. So like, I don't feel like I was underprivileged, but there were things that just like selfishly, I'm like, well, I couldn't have this growing up. So now I get to treat myself to it now. So I think it's just inherent and so much more when you actually like didn't get to or didn't have available those things growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is one of the, I also think back on, wanting to make up for the things that I didn't have. Also as a proof that I had succeeded, but it was also a lot of like shopping mindlessly. I wasn't very intentional. I remember I would, be on my way to the supermarket and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, let me just hop into Ross. Let me hop into, some store. Let me go to the mall just to see if I could find something. And it was not intentional. I wasn't trying to buy a specific outfit for a specific thing. And again, because I was shopping at some of these stores, like these discount stores, I thought I was being good. I wasn't buying the most expensive things. So I was being very mindless about my spending. And it's not about not spending. It's about being intentional. And I think that was the huge shift that I made when I began to really understand how people were able to build wealth. When I saw like people were, investing and saving $100, $200, $300, $400 a month. And then now, thousands of dollars a month. I'm like, how in the world are they doing that? Well, I was spending hundreds of dollars at, Burlington and Ross and Marshalls and all these different stores. Right. And I will say like, cutting expenses was very hard for me. I failed at no spend challenges. And I know you all do these quite often, but to this day, I have never completed a no spend challenge. Now, I will say today, I don't need to do a no spend challenge because I only spend with intention and I have no regrets about if I'm going to spend money on something. I'm like, I've thought about it. I have a 48-hour rule. I have things in my Amazon cart that I've had for months, if not years, that I'm like, okay, maybe one day, but not today,
Yes. Oh, that's so good. Just being patient with it and thinking more intentionally about it. Absolutely. So much of what you're describing here is the whole person, the emotions and relationships and finances all converging, this reconciling that you had to go through of why am I spending this way, to realize, oh, because of Clueless, like that image. I mean, I'm sure there's a whole lot more there for you too, but yeah, to realize, I don't think that we can make massive shifts without understanding where have we come from and where do we want to go. It can't just be a where do I want to go, because our background is going to keep impacting us unless we look at it. And yeah, it sounds like that's a massive part of how you're finding yourself where you're at today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I really had to sort of think about, because I always kept kind of a budget. And well, basically my budget was a list of my bills, right? And then when I began to look at how much money I was supposed to have left over, I never had that left over, right? Because I would find ways to spend it. And so it was, this is why I failed at those no spend challenges. And I remember like the first time that I was trying to do it for a week, I would, all of a sudden, go to the vending machine at work, end up going to, buying lunch, even though I had packed my lunch, or, it was just like things like that, and realize like, wow, there's a lot of spending that I'm doing that has no purpose, no reason, and I'm not even thinking about it. And it wasn't until I kind of thought about it. It's kind of like if you're ever trying to get on a physical health journey, right? And they ask you to, like keep a journal of, what you're consuming. It was the same thing. It was on my fiscal journey, keeping sort of track on what I was consuming. And I realized it was a lot harder than I had thought. And so for me, it was, number one, I had to really become intentional with what I was spending, how I was spending it, and really think about, my trip to Target to buy, some like cleaning supplies. Why do I have like 6 items from, a different part? And I would justify it and say, no, well, these were from the dollar bin, right? And it was still like, well, this is not, this is money that you could be putting elsewhere.
Yeah, you waste 100% of the money you buy on things you don't need. So
right.
I love that intentionality, like piece. I think that's the overall arching. And I think, yeah, like journaling so a lot of people say just tracking your transactions manually every day, like that's a way that you can be intentional. I like the idea of journaling your transactions. I've just been getting into this idea to not just say, okay, I spent this all day, but thinking about, okay, where was I? What was I doing before? So kind of like looking at the habit cues, like trying to figure out what triggered the spend. And so you can look back later on it and figure out, if you see a pattern, what the source, like what the reason of the spending is. So I'm really getting into like transaction journaling. Is there anything else you used to be more intentional about your purchases?
Yeah. I mean, knowing your emotional triggers, right? For me, it was boredom sometimes. Sometimes it was just like out of boredom. I would like surf the, internet. There were things like, unsubscribing, or even just like I started a whole new email address, because trying to unsubscribe from all of the stores and newsletters and promo feeds that I had, it was like all of a sudden I would be triggered to now need something or want something that I didn't even need. So being more intentional about everything that I spent, and also understanding the power of compound interest, because it wasn't enough for me, I don't think, and maybe for some people it is, but saving money just for the sake of saving money wasn't that motivating. Right? I think we all know that we need to put some money aside for the future. But it was understanding, like, if I spent this $20 today, if I, for example, if I invested these $20, what would that look like in a year or 10 years from now? And I feel like that was where I really started shifting. So I mentioned that I would look at my budget and I'm supposed to have, a few $100s left over. I would have like my budget would say that I was supposed to have like $250 left over every month, and I didn't have that. And when I became intentional about where I was spending money, and I was like, okay, can I put maybe not $250, but can I reclaim $100? And what would putting $100 away in a savings account and or investing, what would that look like? And again, I did those calculations of like, okay, if I invested this in, just by putting money away, more money aside, even in my like 401k, right? So that I didn't even have to think about it. What would it look like a year or 10 or 20 years from now? That was what made the difference. And I would do this, and I still do this to this day, every time I go to purchase an item, because I don't think there's nothing wrong with wanting something, even if you don't like necessarily need it, right? Like you might want a new jacket, but I think understanding the true cost of it, that is where the key thing came from it. If you understand like what you might be giving up, and that might be worth it to you. And so buy it without guilt. But the problem is that if you purchase something without really understanding what it's really costing you, that's where it's important. And also equating the amount of hours I would have to work in order to purchase that thing also was really helpful for me.
Walli,
That's great.
now the fun part. How did you end up becoming the first millionaire in your family?
Yeah. So I always get like weirded out by this question, but
It's usually, yeah, we'll keep calling you a millionaire so that you can accept it, so that you can take that identity and confidence.
yeah, but this also talks to like that whole like mindset work, right? Because our relationship with money, when we talk about money mindset, it's only like your behaviors, your reaction, your feelings towards money. And even that is still something that I have to work towards. I mentioned that in my 20s, I was making a really good salary, and I started making six figures around my late 20s. And so I did have money that I could really begin to throw at my savings account and also investing. And so I know that that comes from a very like privileged place too, because not a lot of people have that. But I hope that I've been able to relate that it doesn't matter if you're making $40,000 a year or, $100,000 a year, because it was pretty clear that I was making $100,000 and spending $100,000, right? I wasn't going into debt, but I was spending every penny that I own and being able to put money aside. And so it was sort of a journey of about a year or so where it took me about a year to really get a handle of my shopping, right? Because I was a complete impulsive shopper. So it took me about a year to really hone that in. Or rein that in. Once I was able to do that, I realized that now I had several $100s and then about $1,000 left over that I could really throw into some of my wealth building. And I started, number one, by doing something that isn't even all that sexy, but it works, which is really maxing out my 401k through my employer. And I worked for a government agency, so I didn't have a 401k, but I had something similar called a TSP, or a thrift savings plan. And so again, I didn't do it all at once. I couldn't do it all at once because I had to rein in the spending. But what I did is several times in the year, I would just increase that until it kind of hurt a little bit. And until I was able to meet that maximum contribution. Then I opened something called the Roth IRA, and the limit to the Roth IRA is $6,000. So these were very slow steps that I took. Now I ended up getting married. And so now we had two incomes. Now I am the main breadwinner of my family. So he's not a six-figure earner, but because we had reined in what our spending was, we really were able to maximize that extra inflow of cash to be able to reach our financial goals. And the same thing, we couldn't max out his 401k right away until, we just kept making decisions. And obviously there's raises and promotions and bonuses, anything like that, until we were able to start maxing out all of the retirement plans that we could. So all of our 401ks, both of our 401ks, both of our Roth IRAs. And it took me from 2016 to 2021 to reach that $1 million point. And that sounds like it happened really fast. And it did. And a lot of that really has to do with the health of the market that we're in, but also being really consistent. We weren't day trading. We didn't have like all these like meme stocks. We were doing the very lazy thing. And so I just want to really encourage people. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 years, but if you are just slow, steady, and dedicated to making those small choices, if you can increase your income and if you can reduce your expenses, and the difference between both of those things really is the key to wealth building.
And this is all while living in some of the most expensive cities in the country. So it's not like you were making all this and living in Florida. Like, you were making closer to an average income for where you were living.
Yeah, I hear this all of the time where people are like, oh, where I live in a high cost of living area. Like, we lived in California, in Northern California. So it was expensive to live there. And then we moved to New York and we made some really conscious decisions about where we lived, right? It was important to us not to, like have ramen noodles and rice and beans. And we don't. We live a very full life, but we have decided what that full life means. That full life doesn't mean having a BMW and a Mercedes Benz, right? That full life doesn't mean, never cooking and, and, only eating takeout or going out to eat. Like, this is what is most important to us. And here's a really good example. My husband, it's really important to him. Like, food experiences are really important to him. I don't really care about those as much, but it was really important to him. And what we realized was, okay, rather than spending a little bit of money on takeout and going out, we have a food budget and we can decide how we want to spend. We have a dining out budget and we can decide how we want to spend it. We can, go to Olive Garden or Cheesecake Factory or something like that. Or we can choose a really nice restaurant once, right? Or twice in a month instead of going to Olive Garden 3 times a month, right? So, and sometimes we do choose that. That's fine too. But it's about that intention.
Ain't nothing wrong with the OG.
Yeah.
Are you saying Olive Garden isn't really nice? Are you not saying they're not?
When you're there,
high-class?
you're family. Okay? It doesn't have to be nice.
Hey,
that's why you can wear your sweats.
I love the unlimited salad and soup.
Fill up
bring your
on
own
the
TV.
salad and breadsticks. Take that meal home. Make it last all week.
But
we know the hacks.
Yes, absolutely. But it was also like, again, being very intentional. Like, if we wanted to do that, right? No problem. We could do that. But because it was really important to my husband to like try new restaurants and try new things, and like dining out here in the city, it's really expensive. It was like, okay, instead of going to like, or even like Uber Eats or Seamless, instead of like doing those type of, using our money for that type of dining out, like, let's focus, let's pick an experience that we can go to. And it might just be once or twice, but guess what? We ended up valuing it a bunch more because we could only do it once or twice a month. And now we could add more if we wanted to, but it's just fine. Like, for us, it just makes us content and we appreciate it.
Sure. What you're describing is both good for the now and the future, right? Sometimes I think we can have sights on that millionaire thing, but it's like, to what end? Or just focusing on retirement, or just focusing on living a good life now. But I think what your approach is beautiful in that it both is aligning with values and a full life now, and taking care of yourself for the future, because who knows what capacities and abilities are going to look like 15, 20, 30 years down the road. It's a fun thing to say, millionaire, I've become a millionaire, but it also sounds like there's so much rich wisdom that has come to you through this, and just a really enjoyable, full life now, again, and in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes, I'm sure some of your listeners might be familiar with like the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early, right? And there's some people who want to like scrimp and save every single penny and just like, live bare minimum for the rest of their journey until they can be financially independent. And that was never a journey that I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to be.
It's a very few people is that right for. if anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, my husband valued, dining experiences, and I really valued traveling. And so I wanted to be able to continue to travel while also building wealth. And I think that when you again, align your spending with the things that you value most, you can have those rich lives. You can have a really rich life. So being able to understand what is it that you value most, be intentional about spending in those areas, then everything else is okay, right? But just be honest and realistic about what is it that you're really spending on.
Speaking of a rich life, intentionality,
Amen. I'm intentional about
beauty,
this every week.
Life-giving.
The bill of the week.
That's right. It's time for the best minute of your entire week. Maybe a baby was born and his name is William. Maybe you paid off your mortgage. Maybe your car died and you're happy to not have to pay that bill anymore. Duck Bills, Buffalo Bills, Bill Clinton. This is the bill of the week.
Hey now.
Woo! Walli, every week we invite a guest or a listener to share with us their bill of the week. And so we would love to hear what yours is.
Okay, so just this week, I received 2 renewal notices for home insurance. Now, if you are a homeowner, you understand that you need homeowners insurance, but you should only have one policy. And what happened was that last year, after doing a little bit of comparison shopping, I canceled one of my homeowners insurance and got a new company and established homeowners insurance with that company. But realized that when I got the 2 renewal notices, that original homeowners insurance policy had never canceled. Not only that, but they never, they charged me for it. So I paid, or through my escrow, right? So through my mortgage company, I paid for 2 homeowners insurance. So I had to give both of them a call to figure out like what was happening, like what happened, and called my mortgage company to understand what happened. And with a simple call, I called the old homeowners insurance, was able to cancel that policy, and they were able to post-date the cancellation, and I will now be receiving a refund. So I feel like the moral of the story is just to kind of keep track and, again, make sure that you know where that money's going, because I paid 2 homeowners insurance policies without realizing it. Yeah. And so that was sort of the bill that I had. And I guess the second lesson is to, yes, even if you are happy and content with your homeowner's insurance policy, it's okay to comparison shop. Even with the renewal notice, I looked at what both, not only what the amount was, but also what was the coverage. And it seems still to this day, it seems like the new policy that I had was offering me the same amount of coverage for the same price that the old one was for less coverage. So yeah, that is my bill for this week.
Nice.
Amazing. So recent too.
Oh yeah.
It takes, again, speaking of intentionality, just paying attention, opening your mail and doing the hard thing of making the phone calls and making these things right and saving money along the way. And then shopping. Yeah, there's so much wrapped up in there.
Absolutely.
Shopping for those insurances.
Because those are like the, $100 decisions versus the, $5, $10 decisions that we make to save money on a daily basis. When you're being intentional about your higher expenses, you can save more easily. Mm-hmm. So that's great. Thank you so much, Walli.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jill, to your point, it wasn't that had I opened my mail and understood what I was reading, like when I think about when I was doing my taxes, you have to like list the amount of money that you spent on insurance. They sent me the information of how much money I spent on insurance, but I didn't pay attention to like, hey, that looks like double than what it should be. So yeah, I'm super thankful and grateful that I was able to get a refund, get it taken care of. But like not only opening the mail, but like really understanding what you're looking at.
Reading the mail.
Yeah.
Opening, reading, asking questions, phoning a friend.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Oh, well, if you all listening want to submit your bill of the week, whether it's a recent bill, if it just happened, you saved money, you negotiated, you realized somebody else did something wrong, visit frugalfriendspodcast.com/bill. Leave us your bill. We want to hear it.
We all agree that reducing carbon emissions is a good thing. And once again, Toyota is leading the way. We hear a lot about fully electric vehicles, and Toyota has them, with more on the way. But we also know a BEV is not for everyone, whether it's because of cost, range, or concern about finding a charging station when you need it. Plus, the raw materials used to manufacture batteries are limited. Enter Beyond Zero, Toyota's vision for a carbon-neutral future, in vehicles and in manufacturing plants too, in the years ahead. The materials used to make just one long-range battery for an EV could be used to make batteries for 6 plug-in hybrids or 90 gas-electric hybrids. That's why Toyota's position today is electrified, diversified, empowering you to choose how to reduce your own carbon footprint with the vehicle that's right for you. A hybrid, plug-in hybrid, or battery EV. So shop, learn more, and get details at toyota.com/Beyond Zero. Toyota, let's go places.
We get our weekly groceries delivered through Instacart because once football season starts, game time is family time. I can get everything my family needs for the week, from reliable staples to specialty ingredients, all delivered right to my door in as fast as 1 hour. So I can stay on my game without missing a minute of the game. Visit Instacart.com or download the app to get free delivery on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time. Minimum order $10. Additional terms apply. Instacart. Add life to cart.
And now it's time for
the lightning round. So today's lightning round is going to be pewing off our most recent impulse purchases. Pew, pew, pew. That's what I was thinking.
Pewing?
It sounded horrible when I said it out loud. I know this now in hindsight.
I don't even think that that's a word.
It's not a word.
And
I thought I was
making it a word is gross.
Okay. Anyways, we are going to be sharing. I was just trying to mix it up, Jill.
Okay, yeah. We're in the mix.
It didn't
Here we
work.
go.
All right. You gotta, we're almost at 200 episodes. Still trying things out. So sharing our most recent impulse purchases because the intentionality, the journey to intentionality with your purchases never ends. There's no, okay, now I am a conscious consumer and I never have to think about this again.
Jen loves getting vulnerable.
I do.
And transparent in the lightning round.
I love showing people that we're not perfect. Especially Jill. I
gave all the tips,
want people
but
to see
we still
Jill's not
fail.
Perfect. So, yeah, that's it. And Walli, as our guest, we'd like to put you in the direction of the lightning first. Pew.
Yeah.
Show us your imperfect first.
Oh, yeah, seriously. Okay, so I recently got a puppy. He is 19 weeks old. And so all of my impulse purchases surround things for him.
Because he's so cute.
Because he is
that
so
cuteness.
cute.
It'll get you.
I know.
Bring it.
I know. So I'm always, now go down the pet aisle or, shopping the pet section for any cute items that I think he would love. And, at the end of the day, he just wants to like chew on a plastic bottle rather than the toys that I have for him.
It's like Jen's son. they have toys, but he just ends up playing with sticks.
He also just ends up chewing on plastic bottles. So it's same, really. Same.
Why do we bother?
Oh, that's a good one.
Amazing.
That is a big one. All of our pet owners in the group will constantly say that. Do you have pet insurance on your puppy?
Yes. So,
that's
my
a big
goodness.
one that I've heard is a really great worth the money expense.
So I would say that you definitely need to, I don't think that it's it's fantastic for everyone. Now, I had a lab mix. He was a mutt. And so when I add up all the expenses that I had to pay for like vet bills, vaccines, and then like his end of life care, him not being insured ended up working out because he rarely needed to go to the doctor until really his end of life. But the dog that I have now, he's a French bulldog, and they tend to have more, sort of health issues. And so I, was thinking about like, I don't know what's going to happen, and insuring him now as a puppy versus, waiting until the issue happens. And then now he's not insurable would have been an issue. So, but pet health insurance is insanely expensive. We were looking at prices that were, $150 or more a month to get him insured. Yeah, it was really, really pricey. And we ended up, right now is open enrollment season for so many people who are at their W-2 jobs. And through my employer, they have a health insurance kind of discount pet insurance policy. And so I did some comparison shopping about trying to get pet insurance on my own versus getting it through my job and what that would look like. And I think it was just on Saturday or Sunday, we finalized the paperwork to get him insured. And yeah, we're saving so much money by that. I mean, I think the least expensive insurance policy that we found was like $850 on our own. And through my job, it's like $625 for the year.
That is this right now is the first time I have heard about being able to get pet insurance through your work.
Same.
I don't have a pet, so that's probably partially why. But I had no idea that was a thing employers were doing.
Well, what great timing. So if you have a pet that you want to get insured, try that out. Check it out. Such great timing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had to, I emailed my human resource department, and they were like, I don't know, call the insurance provider. Yeah. So, but I did, I emailed and I said, hey, what, and this is actually not just towards pet insurance, but what discounts are available to the employees of X company? And they gave me a whole list of like, you can get discounts for theme parks, museums, home insurance, pet insurance, short-term disability insurance. So these were a bunch of perks that we have as employers of the company. So definitely look into that.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We're getting our money's worth here.
Yeah, bonus.
Walli, on this lightning round.
Right.
Pew pew. Talking about failures turned into talking about successes.
Well, that's why
how you did
that's
that.
why we start with vulnerability and we end with pet insurance. Jill,
good job, Jen. You really planned that one well.
You are welcome. Jill, you're next.
Okay. Well, this may not make you too happy, Jen, because
Me personally.
Yeah, well, you want vulnerability. You want to know I'm not perfect, and I'm not perfect. But when it comes to spending, I hardly do it. And when I do spend, it is very planned. But here you go. I did go to the grocery store last night with a list, which I'm getting better at. I made a meal plan. I have all of my meals planned out for the next 7-8 days, have a list to go with it. And really was like, if it's not on the list before we go to the grocery store, we're not buying it. This is what I verbally said to my husband, Eric.
Well, your first mistake was taking Eric.
And then I broke that rule. Yes. When he comes. Oh.
Yeah, no, I don't take Travis to a grocery store.
Extra stuff gets put in the actually, and this was a problem too. We went separate directions. He had a shopping cart and I had a shopping cart, and we have a shared list. So it's like a Google list, and we can check it off, and it like real time, it like takes things off the list. We actually love it. It's like a fun thing for us.
Yeah,
now.
But 2 carts, you are 2 small people.
So then he's showing up with all this stuff in his cart. Anyhow, my impulse, what was not on the list was olives. I really like olives. Didn't put it on the list, but I did put it in the cart and bought it impulsively.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
There you go.
I love that answer.
Food. My impulse. It's funny because I looked back at, I literally write out my transactions every 2 weeks. So it's a regular thing that I do. So I was actually able to go back and look like, what did I impulsively buy? And I do it in different categories: food, miscellaneous, gas, and parking. Other than like my bills, those are like more the discretionary spending. And I'm like, I have not spent any money on anything other than food in the last month. So yeah, if it is impulsive, it's going to be on food. Yes.
And I love that it's olives. It always reminds me that episode we did last year where we're like, if you had, if you were a millionaire and you could spend money on anything, like, yes. What would you buy? And my answer was the Aldi Wine Advent Calendar. And I was shamed for that answer.
And for me, it was like an outdoor water feature. And and it was like collectively, right, our desires added
was
up to like $300.
And he wanted like this expensive Harley Davidson.
That's what you do if you were a millionaire, really?
Yeah. So yeah. It makes sense.
All right, Jen,
for us.
your turn. Vulnerability hot seat.
Vulnerability hot seat. Mine tends to be on food as well. I would say I went to Aldi and I got, I don't know if you can see it, a candle. The blue one's always been there, but I got this pumpkin candle. I lined it up really good with my finger too.
Face. If you're listening to this podcast, check this episode out on YouTube because Wally's face just now was perfect. Like, we're talking about impulse purchases and we've got olives and a candle. But hey, that's how you piddle it away.
I was like, forgive me for my expressive face. I forgot we were recording here. So I'll have to check that out.
Good. It's so good.
I didn't even see it because I was looking at I was making sure my finger was pointing to the candle.
But you know what? That is an impulsive purchase. You didn't need another candle, Jen.
I never planned to buy candles. And I used to impulsively
buy them. You already had
a
candle.
Right. Look, it's right next to another candle. Look, there are two candles next to each other. And look, there's a candle here. Like, I didn't buy that one, but
I'm going to get you a candle for Christmas.
So many candles. You have gotten me a candle before, Jill. It's in my room.
Welcome.
Yeah. And so that was my $5 impulse spend, and it is fall scented. So I feel a responsibility to just light the whole thing on fire by the time winter, like, not winter. Winter is subjective here, but like before it's unacceptable to smell pumpkin. But yeah, so I meant to light it before we started recording. I forgot.
It does smell good. I came into your house the other day and I thought you had made something with syrup. It just smelled like syrup to me.
Yeah, it's delicious.
I was like, oh, breakfast. You're like, nope, candle.
Well, thank you for humoring us, Walli. We so enjoyed having you on the show. Please tell our listeners where they can get more from you.
Yeah, thank you, Jen and Jill, for inviting me. This has been fantastic. I can be found at financiallythriving.com. You can find all my social media handles. I'm most active on Clubhouse and Instagram. But yeah, I'm at Financially Thriving.
Awesome. Yes.
Amazing.
I love your Instagram. So definitely go follow Walli Financially Thriving on Instagram. So thank you. And we will talk to you again later.
Bye.
Whew. Another good one for the books.
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
I have so many personal takeaways from this one. And yeah, we say all the time, we essentially do this podcast just for us, but
yeah, I do. I love the idea of looking at the compound interest on things, like thinking, okay, I could buy this thing and have this thing, or I could have the compound interest that investing this money will give me. And then I can buy more things.
The reminder of intentionality and values-based spending, I think that message is never going to get old. It's cool to hear how others are going about that because one approach is not all approaches. So it's really neat to hear her story and how she's going about that. So yeah, definitely check out more from Walli on her website and follow her on Instagram. Good stuff there. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. We want to thank you for your kind reviews on iTunes and Stitcher, like this one. It comes from Ahijalawalhead. It happens
That's
to
close.
be 5 stars. New listener and loving it. I very recently started listening, and so far, the best thing I've learned about was the Frugal Friends Summit. I'm so glad I signed up because not only do I get to discover new people to be inspired by, but watching Jen and Jill and interacting online has increased my enjoyment of listening to their podcast. Highly recommend this podcast. Oh, really cool.
Thank you.
Yes, the summit
Yes.
was amazing. We plan to do this now again. We're hoping it's an annual thing. But I love that this review mentioned watching us and how that might help to engage with it even more. And just as a reminder, we also put out our interviews on YouTube. So if you are a visual person and that helps you, feel free to check out these interviews on YouTube, like this one with Walli and other interviews that we've done. And then look forward to the summit, stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned. We also want to thank our friends who share these episodes on social media. So when you share the latest episode and tag us on Instagram, we are going to add you to our monthly drawing. For every 5 tags and reviews we get every month, we're giving away one of our challenge binders or planners. And this month it is the values-based budget binder. So that is exciting.
So keep leaving us reviews on iTunes and Stitcher and send the screenshot of that review to frugalfriendspodcast@gmail.com. That's our email. That's how you enter to win that drawing for the values-based budget binder. And don't forget to tag us on social.
See you guys next week.
Bye.
Frugal Friends is produced by Eric Siriani.
Impulse spends, Jen.
How do you feel about those olives? How are you feeling about them?
They're really good. We got home from
Good.
our shared shopping experience and it was like 9:30 and I definitely dove right into those olives.
As you should. Not all impulse purchases are bad. Impulse purchases are not inherently bad.
Yeah.
I love a little spontaneity, but a little. Not the spontaneity where it gets overwhelming and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life because nothing is planned and nothing has direction.
Well, there's wiggle room too. And I think it helped because I did go with a list. I find that I am much more overwhelmed when I just find myself at the store. I don't know what I'm going to be doing that week with food. I don't actually remember what's in my fridge and pantry. I'm just willy-nilly trying to do stuff willy-nilly. That's such a weird phrase, but there you go. And just throwing stuff in my cart.
It's better than pewing.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, willy-nilly is actually something people say. Pewing is not.
I know.
It's maybe a verb
well,
for
we're
what
done here.
happens at church. I pew. To mean I sit. I sit in the pew. I don't know. We tried. Okay, bye.
Land.com can help you find that little patch of ground to call your own and do all the hunting, fishing, and hanging out with the family you want. Just know that getting your own piece of land is something that can generate memories for generations, but also has the ability to generate income in both the near and long term. Like if you just want to start a rental business / family compound. Go to Land.com and check out the hundreds of thousands of rural listings from all across America. Enough dreaming about it. Land.com is a place to find and invest in your open space.
With the best all-inclusive vacation deals to Mexico and the Caribbean, booking your getaway with Cheap Caribbean Vacations means you have more freedom to do your deal. Whether you want to enjoy snorkeling, endless margaritas and more, or simply soak up the sun and sand in a tropical paradise, Cheap Caribbean Vacations has your deal for that. Plan and book the exact getaway you want at exactly the right price for you by using our exclusive budget Beach Finder, or find a featured all-inclusive package and do your deal at cheapcaribbean.com.